I don't want to glamorize my journey. My journey is like any common man. So this industry has added huge value to anyone who has been a disciplined investor. पैसा बनाना है तो इतना रिटर्न बनता है वो तो सेकेंडरी है, बट कितने लंबे समय तक आप उसी फंड में या उसी एसेट क्लास में रह सकते हो.
Most people, when they invest in mutual funds, they don't invest for a long time.
Except for gold, real estate or jewelry, where people invest for decades and they pass it on to the next generation. The mutual fund industry is allowed limit of $8 billion to invest globally. I think almost that entire limit is fully exhausted.
You looked at silver and gold when nobody was looking at it.
See, we have one very simple statement.
Hi, Kalpin sir. First of all, thanks a lot for coming on this podcast. I know you're a very busy man. So again, deeply appreciate you giving the time for us to learn something. Yeah. First things first, I want to understand your journey of how you have entered the markets, mainly after your BTech and MBA.
Yeah, I've not entered markets, to be honest, and I don't want to glamorize my journey. My journey is like any common man. Ki, छोटे होते हो तो पढ़ाई करो, learn, study, get your degrees, get a job with some meaningful salary. And accidentally, I got into an asset management company in the year 98 when mutual funds were not very popular. It was an era of mutual fund nahi hai versus mutual fund sahi hai, because they were very early days. Our markets were very volatile. Returns were fluctuating much widely than what we see today. So I just happened to be lucky to join a very fast-growing investment company, asset management company in 98. And 98 to 2025, I have remained in this industry because this industry has added huge value to anyone who has been a disciplined investor. So over time, over 25 years, there are so many funds of those days. Some of the funds which were in the fund I was working with, and some were from peers, including DSP was a peer at that time for me, which have gone up 100, 120, 150 times. So the type of value creation this industry has done in the lives of ordinary Indians is extraordinary. So when an industry creates value for its consumers, it becomes a very scalable and successful and respectable industry. So मेरे case में तो I just had to be there and not make any big errors, because the industry was growing, tailwinds were there, and हर दिन सीखने मिल रहा था कुछ ना कुछ नया, और सीखने के साथ पगार भी मिल रहा था. तो my journey has been like any other, average Indian who studies and, aims for a good job. And then once you get a good job, uske baad I can take credit that I worked hard. I was sincere. I was hungry to learn. और मेरे आसपास इतने अच्छे colleagues थे. Competition के भी लोग इतने अच्छे professionals थे that you learn from everybody. And so it has been a very fortunate and enriching career journey for me. And in these 25 years, I've been exposed to multiple sides of the investment management industry. I started, managing money in fixed income for 2 years. And then I moved into a new role that was created at that point in time called investment specialist, which is a link between the investment team, the fund managers, and the consumers, because many times fund managers will talk a language that consumers may not understand because they are non-stop dealing with complex terms, and the average consumer will not always relate. So my role was to be in the middle and process. Then I moved into sales, distribution. Then again, over time, as my role grew, I got exposed to marketing, product, digital, core investing. And so time has compounded and I have been there. So what we tell our investors, पैसा बनाना है तो इतना रिटर्न बनता है वो तो सेकेंडरी है, बट कितने लंबे समय तक आप उसी फंड में या उसी एसेट क्लास में रह सकते हो, that gives you the benefit of the outcome. So I think our industry has compounded and I have remained in the industry. And hence, I am the CEO of this company today, and hence you have come to meet me.
and sir, I mean, you've seen this from so long, right? As you said, in 1990s, say you've been seeing the mutual fund industry. 98, like evolve and grow completely. And I recently saw there was also a stat where most people, when they invest in mutual funds, they don't invest for a long time, contrary to popular belief where you should. Why do you think that is the case, sir?
I think except for gold, real estate, or jewelry, where people invest for decades and they pass it on to the next generation. Other asset classes mentally are perceived to be fast-moving asset classes. And they show you the prices real time every minute. So when our brain is lured by day-to-day, minute-to-minute prices, there's too much of stimulus given to us, which provokes us to act. And any provocation to act so quickly in such short spans of time is generally harmful to the investor. But we are surrounded by overload of data, overload of opinions, overload of views. Every fund house has a view today. Every CEO will have a view. We will want to communicate our view every few days. I am on social media giving my views. जब भी time मिलता है, I'm giving a view.
Yeah.
There are so many, podcasters like you who are, collecting these views and expressing. तो लोगों के पास पैसा लिमिटेड है, ओपिनियंस बहुत ज्यादा है,
ज्ञान बहुत आ रहा है
और टाइम होराइजन छोटे हैं. और दूसरा एक ये भी होता है कि मार्केट्स में साइकिल्स होती है. देयर आर 2-3 years of good times and then 2-3 years of ordinary flat markets and then 2-3 years of bad times. So 10 साल के पीरियड में 3 से 4 साल बहुत अच्छे होते हैं. तो उस समय में हमें इन्वेस्टर रहने में तकलीफ नहीं होती है. But when the consolidation phase starts or when markets start correcting, we feel I'll stay out right now. Let me come back when good times come. So our loyalty is to only good times. But return बनता है उसके लिए जो loyal होता है खराब समय में. And who is willing to stay invested when prices are falling, when NAVs are going down. And the best investor is the one who is doing SIP at those times. Because when NAVs are falling, if your SIPs are ongoing, you will keep adding lots of units. So in falling market, you increase the number of units. And when markets again rise on higher number of units, you get higher NAV. And that is how wealth building happens. But 90% investors we have seen over time, over every cycle, get excited about markets when the recent past is very good. When last 3 or 5 year returns are very good. And when they start turning volatile or, start coming down, investors get out. So I think it's a behavioral trap of wanting to jump everything which currently looks bad and which in the past has looked good.
But has this happened over time? Because you've been seeing it from 90.
It is a human trait. I'm saying this has been a human trait. This is called recency bias. Every time recent returns are good, you invest. When recent returns are bad, you get out. So this recency bias is a very powerful force of bad behavior. And it has been there forever. It's not unique to this cycle. It's not unique to India. It's a force which is applicable to all human beings at large.
So, sir, you also mentioned that you invest most of your money back into your own funds, right? How is your portfolio diversified in today's market?
It's not just me. I think, see at DSP, our promoters, today the 5th generation is in this business. And all their money, almost I think 85-90% of their liquid market wealth is in our mutual funds. So the ideology is that if we are running an asset management company and we have many schemes which we are telling the whole world to invest in, it is only right that we put our money also in the same schemes. So it starts from our promoters. It starts from the entire workforce. So we are around 550 people. We have a rule internally that all our savings will be invested only in schemes of DSP mutual fund. We cannot do stocks directly. We cannot do bonds directly. It has to be only mutual funds of DSP because that means that we stand with the investor. There will be good times and there will be bad times. There are times when our funds will do very well. There are periods when they will not do well. But we will be the last man standing and we will be fully invested in our funds at all points in time. You as an investor can get out. Of course, this does not necessarily guarantee that our funds will always be good because of this, focus of skin in the game. But it is the right thing to do. And it just aligns everyone's interest together. The investor as well as the operating team which is managing their money.
And how have you allocated this portfolio, like with large, mid, commodities, bonds, like from that point of view?
Let me just check, if you don't mind, on my app. So broadly, you see, over the last 2-3 years, my view as well as my team's view or our house view is that the most prominent asset class that mutual funds are known for is Indian equities. And our markets have done extremely well in the last 5 years. Long-term returns of equity markets are between 13 to 14%. Last 5 years, the returns have crossed 15 to 20%. So our current returns are significantly higher than the median returns that over a long term this asset class can deliver. It also means that this asset class is a little bit ahead of its potential returns. It has run up much faster or much higher than what its fair value should be. and which is why the need to build a more broad-based portfolio, not only investing in one asset class. So my portfolio is a balance of Indian stocks, global stocks, fixed income, and little bit of gold and gold funds, gold ETFs, and sovereign gold bonds. So my breakup currently would be around 40 rupees in Indian stocks through funds. Everything is through funds largely. 40 will be in Indian stocks, around 25 will be in global stocks, around 20 or 25 will be in bonds, and between 10 to 15 will be in gold or similar to gold.
Got it. So quite balanced.
It is diversified because, stocks are expensive in India, and stocks were cheaper in the rest of the world 1 or 2 or 3 years back for a reasonable period of time. So it made sense a few years back to increasingly invest more in global stocks. Also, Indian stocks continue, but also increase exposure of global stocks in our portfolio, in my portfolio. Also, a few years back, gold was consolidating for almost a decade. Almost for 11 years, the return of gold in dollar terms was zero. And it was the time when stocks were expensive. So at that point in time, the asset allocation call was to increase exposure to gold because it has gone through a long phase of zero returns. And on the other hand, Indian stocks had run up sharply. So instead of buying more and more of the expensive asset class, it made sense to add to not so expensive asset classes like gold and global stocks. So that is why my portfolio today is a mix of these 4 asset classes, but it has happened over a period of time. Over the last 7-8 years, this transition has happened.
Got it. And on the take of global diversification, today a lot of Indian retailers are trying to find how do we do this. Either they do direct equity investing in global stocks, which are then they also get scared that there's a bubble, or they try to find ETFs or mutual funds to invest in global funds, right? Now, a lot of people think global is only US. I want to ask you what options do a retail investor have for global funds?
So the easiest option is investing in any global fund. However, right now that option is not easy because the mutual fund industry is allowed limit of $8 billion to invest globally. I think almost that entire limit is fully exhausted. Yeah. So there are very few selective global funds which may be taking new money. And if at all they are taking, it could be only through the SIP route. So that is a great option, but currently not available. The second best option for doing global investing, which I personally currently follow, is to invest in a fund which does combination of Indian and global. Why create too many, slices and layers of funds and pay more tax on rebalancing? Instead of that, if you have a single fund which buys Indian stocks and global stocks, the internal rebalancing of the fund from India to global or global to India is all tax-free. So I prefer a fund which is a hybrid of Indian and global, or even the multi-asset strategy, which is India, global, bonds, and silver. So I prefer funds which are mixed funds because one, they smoothen the NAV journey. They do reduce the long-term return by a small percentage, but they smoothen the journey. And if the journey is smooth of the NAV, you can stay invested for 10, 20, 30 years. If the journey is extremely volatile, most often when the first bout of volatility hits, many investors panic and get out. So for all new investors, in fact, we recommend investing in hybrid funds or multi-asset funds. And personally, I like this combination of India and global, where 30% goes to global stocks, 70% goes to Indian stocks. The third way to do global investing, which is very recent, basis the new development, Reserve Bank allows $2.5 lakh worth of remittances outside through the LRS scheme. So you can buy a global fund either outside India or on GIFT City, through which you can satisfy the LRS rule. So we have recently launched a global equity fund, 100% global, on GIFT City, where it can take money out of your $2.5 lakh limits. So these are 3 routes. So if you want an out-and-out global portfolio, either the mutual fund way, international fund way, or the GIFT City way. If you want a blend of India and global, then again, a mutual fund will give you that option. So we have a fund called DSP Value Fund. It is a fund personally I like a lot because of its design of mixing best companies of India and the world when they are reasonably priced, not overpaying for them. And it allows you in the same fund ability to expand your surface area. And when your surface area expands, in a way, risk comes down. Yeah. So those type of ideas are very useful for investors to learn. Now, having said that, most investors want complex ideas. So, I have observed that investors may not know the taxation of equity in the first place, may not know the taxation of global funds, for example, may not know a lot of nuances about how to choose a fund, how to understand a fund manager. But they always are in the quest of investing in Brazil, investing in Argentina. They want to, think about exotic things like this.
China also was in the trend.
China also. So, our mind likes interesting things, but they may not be necessarily productive or valuable to your final outcome. So we encourage investors to either look at the hybrid version of India and global or the GIFT City version, which is 100% global. The second question is global is not only US, global is global. Global means across the globe. So, for example, in the limited portfolios that we have of global stocks, we have companies from China. We have BYD, Contemporary, Amprex, Tencent, Alibaba, PDD, Anta Sports, ClearTrip.com. These are the Chinese companies which are available in, one or the other of these strategies. The portfolio has companies from Japan. The portfolio is a company from Netherlands. It's a company called Ardian in the fintech space. It has obviously some companies from US also because they are very dominant. They are very large. So, but it has many companies from Europe, for example. So when your boundary conditions expand, you don't have to worry about overpaying in one market. You can go to any other market where high quality businesses are available in a low cycle. And so that is the beauty of investing in a fund which mixes India and global. And investors should think of global as global, not as a country. There is always going to be some risk of volatility if you do single country investing. So India is a single country investing. If you invest only in US, it is going to be a single country investing. If you invest in only China, it's again single country investing. Obviously, it has its own pros and cons, risk and rewards. But whenever a country's returns have lasted for too long, eventually a cycle of mean reversion and consolidation can happen. So if you're in a single country fund, you run the risk of price consolidation or returns not coming very easily. But if you're in a fund which is open about its boundary, no one pushes that fund that go and buy stocks in US even though they are expensive. He has a choice to say, I don't want to buy anything there. I'd rather go to South America, South Africa, Middle East, Southeast Asia. There are business models in different parts of the world.
Very interesting, very interesting. And also, as you mentioned, you have a lot of gold as well in your portfolio, right?
Not a lot.
Some amount of gold.
12 to 13%.
Yeah. And I know recently it became the shiny object in the market as well, that everyone wanted to buy gold and things was just skyrocketing, and a lot of factors and narratives start setting up at that point, right? And you said it was also in a huge consolidation for quite some time, and then it came and broke out. What is your take on gold today? A lot of people have their aggressive takes, bearish takes. What do you think is happening in this space?
Gold is difficult to measure in terms of its value, because there is no cash flow. And so there will always be many different theories to evaluate what is a good price for gold. One simplest theory is that extrapolate what is happening right now. If last 1 year price is high, extrapolate next year also they will rise. Most people think of it that way. Ki teji hai to chalti rahegi. Our minds again like to extend the future into the present into the future without asking this question whether it is practically possible or not. So in case of gold, we in fact launched our gold and silver funds 3 years back when they were all through a low cycle. And my learning has been that when you invest in asset classes which are in low cycle, most likely you are rewarded because the mean reversion of that cycle starts playing out. And when mean reversion happens, funds which are in low cycle actually deliver superior returns. So it's important to think from that perspective.
Do you believe a lot in contra investing?
So before that, I'll also add that, if you take last 25 years history and compare 25 emerging markets and their equity market and compare that to gold, till last year, 24 out of 25 emerging market stock market returns were lower than gold returns in terms of their local currency. And the only country where their stock market had beaten gold was India by a marginal gap of 1%. Now, this was 1 year back, September 24. Fast forward into September 25 or now November 25. In that 1 year, equity markets have been flat. Gold is a 40-50%. So I said in one country, gold was not beating equity. But this year, even that has happened. So even in India now, 25-year return of gold is higher than equity. Now that is a signal to maybe rethink exposure to gold, or maybe be more conservative, because an asset class where its long-term return profile is 10 to 11%, it started to show long-term equity profile of 14%. It means there is a lot of stretch in terms of overvaluation. You as an investor should not come and give exit to that stretch. So if you are underweight gold, you should still own at least 10%, build that up. But just because last 1 year returns are so good, hence build that up further, is not a good argument.
Got it. And one more thing, sir, is do you also look at contra investing a lot? Because you spoke about it multiple times indirectly in the conversation, that you looked at silver and gold when nobody was looking at it. You looked at something else where nobody's looking at it. Do you like finding such type of deep value when nobody's looking at it, which is fair valued as well?
So we have a reasonably large team of analysts and fund managers across sectors. And there are, broadly two belief systems with which history has shown that markets have made money, or money managers have made money. There are two lines of thought broadly. One is to identify companies basis low intrinsic value. So you have a list of companies where you need to identify companies where embedded expectations are low, not intrinsic value. Let me correct that. So the idea is to say that, okay, in these 5 companies, very likely that their profit growth is going to be single digit. Is only 5%. The market is budgeting only 5% profit growth. And you have to then take a call that this company in the last 20 years has done well. The odds of it dropping to 5% growth are very low. And already the embedded expectations are so low that you can't go wrong. So this is generally called, intrinsic value investing. So that's one approach. And the second approach is look for companies which are high quality, which have, great leadership skills, which can navigate the company through bad industry cycles, which can help the company pick up market share when the industry itself is slowing down. Such companies are basically high quality companies because they have great management. And because of all this execution, their return on equity is significantly higher. So the entire market's ROE is 14%. Our portfolio ROEs are around 19%, because the 19% comes from curation of the entire portfolio of the plant. You curate 30, 35, 40 stocks where growth rates are good, where balance sheets are good, and valuations are good.
And do you have a framework for this?
So if you go to our website, dspim.com, we have investment frameworks as a section. And when you click on that, it will list you the names of 6 fund managers and their ideology document. So each manager's belief system is publicly available for you to read and for you to decide which manager is right for you. So like I said, we have growth and quality as a style, and we have, intrinsic value based investing also as a style. And then we try to extensively communicate how to pick these funds by putting it up on our website. But we have both the styles. Now, I don't know what can be labeled as contra investing. We don't have that label at DSP, but we have broadly these 2 styles: growth quality as one, valuation based style as a second.
And one more question I have is, during market cycle and downturns, I think we've only seen most of the new age investors that have come. I've seen it in the COVID time, but it was like a knee-jerk reaction. When we do see a next market downturn, what do you suggest people should do at that point?
See, we have one very simple statement that either there will be a bull market in NAVs or there will be a bull market in units. You can repeat or relate in your mind. When markets are rising, the NAV will rise. It will be a bull market. When markets are falling, and if you are an SIP investor, you are buying more units every month. So while the NAVs are in a bear market, but the units go into a bull market. And the primary job of an investor, a very long-term investor who's building a great financial future for himself, is to acquire more units. So a bear market, enables you to acquire more units. A bull market actually gives you far lesser units, which is why you have to be very cautious and careful in a bull market. So our messaging of late, we've done a very interesting campaign in newspapers as well as hoardings across the various airports, is I will not stop. And then there is a huge poetry written along with it. I will not stop investing in SIPs when NAVs are cheaper, or buying more units, or I will not stop. So there are a lot of behavioral practices that we don't need to follow. So this ad campaign actually tries to educate you against that. And all through our communication, through our channel partners or directly on our social media handles, we have always said that be aware that markets will fluctuate. The only universal truth is markets fluctuate. So when they rise, it is fluctuation. When they fall, it is also fluctuation. So you can't expect that markets will rise and only rise. It has to fall. So that awareness building is very important. The whole industry needs to talk in that single language. A certain lot of investors have matured, they have seasoned, they understand these dimensions. They in fact put more money when markets fall. And there is a lot which has come for maybe 15 to 20% return. But in such periods of volatility, the returns come down and the investor panics or gets greedy and tends to leave. So maybe next time when correction happens, more or less similar pattern will follow. The ratio of people belonging to buckets of either increasing their number of units or stopping their SIPs, we'll get to know only then. There will be definitely enough number of people who will stop their SIPs in spite of our marketing campaign. Because you can't fight human instincts. You can't find human behaviors. So those who understand are very long term. Those who understand, they actually top up more when markets fall. Those who don't will behave differently.
And I also feel, sir, that a lot of people, the retail audience today, are very confused with mutual funds, right? Again, because of the noise factor you said, there's one side that says just accumulate index funds and NAVs. Then there's another side that says, okay, but I also want flexi cap, mid cap, small cap for the alpha. All risky. Then they would go a little bit for hybrid when the game changes. And I saw one of your news articles, you had mentioned that when the market goes for a bad turn, try to accumulate as many flexi cap as possible. Now, if I'm a new guy, let's say in the market, I'm building a long-term wealth creation. How do I balance myself out here?
So first of all, it is unfair to say that mutual funds are complex from a selection point of view. Of course, they are complex because there is a huge range.
I think people have, yeah.
Of course, no, you're right. But it's not only mutual fund. What I'm trying to aim for is almost most things in life where too many choices are available to you to make. The mind has a cognitive overload. Select कैसे करना है? आपको शादी के लिए spouse ढूंढनी है और आप बहुत सारों को मिलोगे तो confusion होता है.
And thematic also had come with so many thematic funds.
आपको mobile select करना है. There are multiple range of mobiles. There is confusion. You want to study and whether you want to go into science or arts or commerce or business, and of that there are 20 schools and colleges. Of course, वहाँ पे ranking और वो सब होता है. But which school to go? Wherever choice has to be made, there is room for some bit of uncertainty, and uncertainty creates confusion. So you can't wish this away. But there, in fact, we had done an ad campaign a few years back which said that till you find the next best fund manager, just index. Because the investor is constantly in a quest of choosing the best fund, which has already become the best. And the best keeps changing every few years. The best fund of last 3 years most likely will not be the best fund of the next 3 years. Definitely what was not the best fund prior 3 years back. So ये mean reversion or cyclicality of fund performance keeps happening. So because of these choice of funds, the noise will always be there. So investors have to first search for a good advisor or a good mutual fund distributor who will say कि आपकी ज़रूरत क्या है और ये 2000 फंड में से ये 10 फंड अच्छे हैं. I am putting my own money in these 10 funds. They have track record. They have an ideology. In fact, many funds are reasonably good. Investors should not just get confused because अगर आप long term investor बने रहोगे, फायदा उसी में होता है. Not about the choice of fund, whether you chose DSP fund or XYZ fund, वो secondary decision है. The first decision is to get your asset class right. The second decision is to get your time horizon right. And the third decision is that within that asset class, in which type of funds are you putting your money? So confusion hota hai because, we want to make decisions too frequently. But a right way of investing is to minimize your decisions. The lesser the number of decisions, the lesser the number of errors that are made in taking these decisions. And remember, most people who are taking decisions about investing do not seem to know much about investing. They are very good in their domain. They are very good in writing a code. They are very good in, treating a patient. They are very good in acting in a TV channel. So individuals are very good in their career, but you can't apply that confidence of your profession into feeling confident about investing and saying, I know it all. And when we see the usual pattern of choosing a mutual fund is go to any digital website and search for top ranking funds.
Top 1 year return, 1 month.
In spite of the fact that it has been proven world over again and again that there is always performance migration. आप जब भी फंड को रैंक 1 पे आके लेते हो, most likely future में fund का rank 2, 3 या 4 होगा. So your holding period will never give you a 1 rank fund. For that you have to be in a fund which is ranked 2, 3 or 4, where the fund eventually migrates up to 1 before it migrates down. So all funds have migration, and investors need to learn a better way to choose funds. If it is not easy, if it is too overwhelming to do that, the first step to take is choose a good mutual fund distributor. अच्छे distributor या advisor को ढूंढो, and then let him do your diagnostic to understand what are your time horizons, your cash flows, your goals, your risk appetite, and that diagnostic will guide you to the choice of a portfolio or to the choice of schemes that you should have.
Interesting. And so coming to investments, right? I would want to learn from you as to one good investment maybe you've done in the past that was, something that you analyzed, understood, framework, and it played out well, and one which did not play out well.
So I think what played out well in the last few years was investing in our gold mining fund when the prior 5-year returns were negative. And there were broadly signals that most gold mining companies globally were improving their cash flows with gradually rising gold prices. This was 3 years back. So their cash flows were likely to improve and their valuations were very cheap. So if a cycle of gold were to play out, that strategy would have done exceedingly well. So it so happened that the cycle of gold played out. And the gold mining sector has a beta of 2 to gold prices. So if gold goes up 40%, gold mining stocks go up 80%. So that trade is done reasonably well. Then I believe in investing in design of a fund rather than a fund. So I spoke about this concept of mixing Indian and global stocks. So we had launched this fund 5 years back. This fund is of choice of Indian companies and global companies. So there are phases when Indian stocks do well, the global component is sideways. So it doesn't look very good in returns. But I kept on adding to that because the design is very robust. And there is a phase when Indian stocks don't do well and global stocks do well, like last year. So last year, the fund has delivered returns superior to most mutual funds in the country because the 30% global component ended up doing well. There will be a period when that underperforms. Yeah. And you will feel painful to live through that. But I prefer funds like this because the 70-30 mix is broadly kept intact. And if, let's say, Indian stocks have run up, 70 becomes 80. I can trim 10 and go back to global stocks. On the other hand, like last year, global stocks have run up. 30 has become 35, or in fact 40. And I can trim that extra 10 and bring it back to Indian equities. And all of this is done without paying any tax. So these are 2 good examples I've given you because global stocks have done well over the last 5 years. So this fund also looks good on performance. What are the areas where I have not made money?
Yeah, some learning, something went wrong.
We have a fund called our Midcap Fund, which has been one of our best funds over the last 18 years or so. It is going through a rough patch right now. It is a fund where its ideology is very simple. The fund manager looks for long-term scalable businesses which have a very long runway of growth because they are in markets where the total addressable market is very large. And these companies are run by very solid entrepreneurs or teams which are very good at running that business. And lastly, honesty and integrity has to be a very important check. So if you think of investing in designs like that, you have better odds of outcome. So in Midcap, the fund manager has long-term time horizon, looks for great companies. What has happened in the last few years, great companies have become more expensive in India. The fund manager says that yes, some of the companies have become expensive or some of the companies have seen the price fall by 25-30% because the company is in an industry where the industry is in a low cycle. I'm patient. I've always been patient in the last 15-20 years and my patience has always paid off. So I lived through pain of 1 or 2 years, but in the 3rd, 4th year, mostly the NAVs recover very sharply. So that's the ideology, which has worked 85% of times. But in the latest 15% of times, this ideology is not yet working. So that is one of the areas where one of my fund has not done well. Even though I like the ideology, I like the way the manager thinks, I like the way he picks up entrepreneurs and businesses, and I like the way he's loyal to companies, solid companies when they are going through their down cycle. So after COVID, when markets became faster, when turnovers were very important, and we were slightly slow, because being slow has worked for us all through. So the thought is, why do you fix what is not broken? But in this cycle, being agile and fast has worked better than being slow. These things keep changing and evolving. What we will not compromise is the focus on high quality companies, free cash flows, and governance. When will they make higher than the rest of the market return? Time will tell. But so these are some examples of. So I won't say it's a bad decision. My decision to invest in that fund is still right, but the outcome has not been in line with what I would have thought.
Got it. And so, looking at Indian market now with the SIP growing so much as well, which is a very good sign for the DII investing community, right? Where do you see India? Which good sectors do you see in India for the next 2 to 3 years, or 5 years?
See, our portfolio's largest weights are BFSI companies, so banks, financial services, capital market, insurance, NBFCs. That is a very large component of all our portfolios because.
Where do you see like good pocket of growth coming?
So the way we invest is not just look at growth, but how much of that growth is priced in. So banks are in a spot where growth is reasonably stable because the country needs credit and banks can give loans easily, but they are able to do it with reasonable profitability also. So growth is there, but it is coming with profitability. And lastly, it is a sector which has seen de-rating of its valuation over the last 5 years. So this is a good setup where the business models have improved. The growth rates are rising, but the valuations have come down. And our reason to own banks is because of this combination, not just because they are growing fast. Growth is very important. Equally important is how are they valued. And banks, amongst all sectors, are valued closer to fair value. Most other sectors are valued far away from fair value. So BFSI is a large weight for us. Auto ancillaries is a large weight. I think healthcare stocks also are reasonable weights.
And these have a good runway in the future as well.
They have a good runway and they are valued right. So we see the most investors focus only on one part, the runway. But if you've already overpaid for that runway 3-4 times, then you need the runway to first get built. It can't be that हमने पैसा लगाते गए और अभी तक road बना ही नहीं है. So valuations also play an important role.
Okay, so now last little light towards the end, right? I'm going to do something like a rapid fire round where I'm just going to ask you some questions and you have to answer in a minute. Okay. These might be a little bit of myth busters and all of that, right? The first question is step up versus buy the dip. What is your notion on this?
Both.
So step up also.
If you have cash flows, you should do both. And step up when markets are falling because NAVs are cheaper. So you can get higher units. So if you're doing a 5,000 rupee SIP and now markets have reset 20% lower. It happened from September last year to February this year. Markets were cheaper. All NAVs were reset 20% lower. So incrementally, if I had few more cash flow, I should have done a step up. I'll add more units just because of the market correction. I'll also add more units because of the step up. On the other hand, buy the dip is also in a way similar to that framework that NAVs are cheaper, buy more units.
Okay. Second, there is a myth in the market that if a fund has a large AUM, they might not be able to give good returns in the future. What is your take on that myth?
See, good funds will give good returns. Not so good funds will not give good returns. Size is not a very big dime. So far, there is no data to prove. So in fact, if anyone is giving this hypothesis, you should say that write a code and backtest it and see whether that's true or not. But our view is that it is not true.
But do you think India is getting deep with respect to the AUM that is loading up in the market with mutual funds? Do you think our market is also getting deep with the absorption capacity?
Market is right. Look at the last 2 years. For the 5 lakh crores which has come in through SIPs annually, there is 5 lakh crores of supply which has come where promoters have sold their companies. Or private equity firms are getting out and they are IPOing the PE investments they had. So new businesses are coming, new business models are coming, supply is there. It is offsetting the demand.
Correct.
There's nothing to worry about that.
Beautiful. Okay. The next question is, what are the 3 books or blogs that you have read in the recent past that has really helped you? Or something that the retail investor should also read?
See, one book that an ex-colleague and a friend of mine has written very recently released. In fact, I've gifted it to 50 people already. Is a book by Manish Dangi called Booms, Busts and Cycles. It is about a very practical journey of Indian markets over the last 25 years. And what are the variables to learn to understand investing better. And it is a book which explains the lay of the land and the structure of what drives returns. Return कैसे बनता है, कहाँ से बनता है, equity का return कितना होना चाहिए, debt का कितना होना चाहिए, cycles क्या होती है, sizing कैसे करना चाहिए, portfolio construction कैसे होना चाहिए. A lot of these practical dimensions are a part of this book. And I am biased, but I'm very authentic in saying that this is a book which has taught me also a lot to reflect and evolve and improve my decision making framework. I think every serious investor should read this. The second book I have always liked is called The Art of Thinking Clearly by Rolf Dobelli. It explains in very quick chapters various human biases we exhibit every day in our decision making, including in investing. So once you know these biases, you are ready to curb them next time you're going to exhibit that bias. So it helps you in awareness of these biases. And every chapter has one or two hacks that if you have recency bias, what type of hack will help you? If you have overconfidence bias, what type of hack will help you not demonstrate that bias? So it's a very, very valuable book I have found. And I think in terms of blogs, I like reading Morgan Housel's blogs. They are very simple. They are very fluent in their writing. And they weave in a lot of stories of the world into approach of investing.
And so last question, what is your take on the IPO market in India right now?
See, there's nothing new to give a take on. IPOs तो आए और गए हैं. Market के cycles भी आते और जाते हैं. There are periods when markets are hot, many IPOs come. There are periods when market cycles are slow, IPOs will stop coming. एक बार जो investor पैसा लगा रहा है, more and more money is coming in the market. Had IPOs not been there, to a certain extent, the demand-supply mismatch would have become far more magnified. Stock market is there to offer capital to entrepreneurs to run businesses and build businesses. And IPO markets are in manifestation of that. At the same time, what we have to be mindful of as money managers is that we screen IPOs very stringently the way we screen listed companies and only choose those IPOs where we are able to satisfy either of the two investment styles that we operate with. Valuation-based investment style as one, or it is growth and quality as a style. So I think IPOs will always be there when flow cycle is very high and positive, and IPOs will slow down when flow cycle is also slower.
So it's actually a good thing that they're absorbing the liquidity in the market.
See, to the investor, it doesn't matter. What I'm saying is that many times, investors बहुत सारा global ज्ञान बटोरने की कोशिश करता है जिससे उसके outcome को कोई फर्क नहीं पड़ने वाला है. Like so many times we are asked this question, SIP flows are rising. What do you think about it? So I have been, my son is doing an SIP for last 17 years. उसको नहीं पता है कि SIP flow ऊपर जा रहा है नीचे जा रहा है. How does it matter? He's focused on his studies. And छोटा पैसा जो है हर महीना SIP में ऐड हो रहा है. और FIs are selling. What will you do? जिसको बेचना है वो बेचेगा, जिस दिन खरीदना है खरीदेगा. तुम क्यों चिंता करते हो? और उसके वजह से अपने फाइनेंशियल प्लान को डिस्ट्रैक्ट मत करो. Because FIs are selling does not mean markets will fall tomorrow. FIs are buying does not mean markets will rise tomorrow. Whatever will happen tomorrow is not going to have any impact on your 10-year outcomes. So आज क्या हो रहा है उसका बहुत कम bearing होता है on the period in which you're going to take all your money back. So investors need to be a bit more still and meditative about the type of questions they should ask. Better question should be, how do I search a good advisor? How do I search a good fund manager? How do I select amongst this confusion? How do I become a better investor myself? How do I, be a 5-star investor versus chasing a fund which is 5-star?
Very interesting, very interesting. I think these were some great answers, sir. And I think that is the end of the podcast. But again, first of all, sir, I want to thank you for doing this. Lot of interesting information and takes that you have given from more of an asset allocation standpoint and understanding about the markets, because these are some myths that in the market today people are very confused, right? And as you said, the noise in the market is a bit too much right now.
I hope I have not added to their confusion.
No, I hope not. Yeah. No, I don't think you've added to the confusion, because abhi wo ho raha hai ki, as you said, right? Everything is looked on with utmost scrutiny by the retail audience, right? Why is the DII having so much cash? Why are they not deploying? And as you said, the markets are expensive. You cannot deploy. Diversification, I think they want to diversify all across the world. And then China becomes, once China's up 35%, everyone wants to invest in China. So that is usually how it is. But I think after seeing this podcast, a lot of people will understand that having a good approach, as you said, you become a 5-star investor, and instead of finding a 5-star fund, I think that is a good take on this. So again, thanks a lot, sir, for coming and helping.
Thank you, and all the best to all your listeners and to
Thank you
for doing this. Thank you.